As you saw from the previous module, there are a lot of directory services to think about, and often we already have something on premises. We probably have that on-premises Active Directory controller running on Windows Server 2012 or 2016, and we don't really want to create a whole new source of truth when we move in towards Azure Active Directory. Perhaps we already have started some of this when we do O365, but if we're starting out fresh, we need to make sure they remain in sync, and that's where Azure AD Connect really comes in. And so Azure AD Connect has a number of components. First of all, it has synchronization services. This component is what's responsible for creating the users, groups, and other objects in Azure Active Directory. It's also responsible for making sure identity information for your on-premises users and groups is completely matching the cloud. What we don't want is a complete mismatch there, because then everything gets out of sync and gets very, very complicated. It also has an option for Active Directory federation services. This is optional, and federation really allows us to configure a hybrid environment using an on-premises ADFS infrastructure. And this can be used by organizations to address more complex type deployments, such as domain join SSO, or perhaps we have third-party MFA solutions. MFA is multi-factor authentication that you'll hear about soon. Perhaps with smart card solutions, things like that, that we need to integrate with. We might need to use Active Directory federation services. And then finally, we have health monitoring. This is called Azure AD Connect Health, which you'll see in the third module in this section of the course. And this provides robust monitoring and provides a central location in Azure for you to view all your health activity and making sure that your domains are all in sync and there's no issues. It helps now to take a look at some of those AD Connect sync features in particular. And first of all, we have the concept of filtering. And this is used when you want to limit which objects are synchronized to Azure Active Directory. By default, all users, contacts, groups, and Windows 10 computers only are synchronized. And you can change this filtering based on domains, organizational units, or other attributes if you want to. We then have the concept of password hash synchronization. And this synchronizes the password hash in your on-premises Active Directory up to Azure AD. So the end user can use the same password on premises and in the cloud, but they only have to manage it in one location. Since it uses your on-premises Active Directory as the authority, you can also use your own password policy that you decide to implement in your on-premises Active Directory. And this comes up a lot when clients are sometimes using password policies that are in, say, Active Directory domain services from Azure. That's the managed Azure AD domain services, to be specific. It may not give you the same password policy features. Whereas when you use an AD Connect Sync, if you've got a password policy on premises, that will carry over to Azure AD. We then have the concept of password writeback, which will allow your users to change and reset their passwords in the cloud, and this will write back to on-premises. We have the concept of device writeback, which will allow a registered device in Azure AD to be written back to your on-premises Active Directory, so it can be used for conditional access. We have prevent accidental deletes, which is turned on by default, and this protects your cloud directory from numerous deletes at the same time. So by default allows 500 deletes per run, and you can change the setting depending on your organization size. And finally, great feature, obviously, automatic upgrade, enabled by default for all the express setting installations, and this ensures your Azure AD Connect infrastructure is always up to date with the latest release. You don't have to worry about going ahead and updating any of that. Now, before we wrap up, make sure you understand the different password sync options, and there are three major ones. So we have password sync, and this is where we're ensuring that user passwords are the same in both directories, Active Directory domain services and Azure AD. An alternative is we have pass-through authentication. This is where we authenticate, and instead of Azure AD authenticate, it actually passes that request onto the ADDS server, gets the approval, sends it back to the user that way. So essentially a single source being ADDS. And finally, we have ADFS, which is using Active Directory federation services to fully federate across ADDS and Azure AD, along with other services. So perhaps you might have ServiceNow as an example, as a SaaS service a lot of people use for ticketing, things like that. Perhaps that's using ADFS and it's federated with your Active Directory domain service. So just make sure you understand these three. And with that, this concludes this part of the module.